Hello, my dear friends. Today, I want to invite you on a journey back in time. We are going back over 2,000 years to the ancient sands of Egypt. We are going to talk about a woman whose name is still famous in every corner of the world. Her name was Cleopatra. This is not just a dry history lesson from a dusty book. This is a story of drama, gold, power, and a woman who refused to be forgotten. Her life was like an exciting movie, filled with narrow escapes and bold decisions. As you listen, you will not only hear a great story, but you will also practice your English. You will hear clear sentences and powerful words that will help you speak with more confidence. So sit back, relax, and let us begin the story of the last queen of the Nile. Our story starts in the year 69 BCE in the beautiful city of Alexandria. A baby girl was born into the most powerful family in Egypt. This family was called the Ptolemaic dynasty. But here's a secret that many people do not know. Cleopatra was not originally Egyptian by blood. Her family came from Greece. Her ancestor was a famous general who fought alongside Alexander the Great. When Alexander died, this general became the king of Egypt. For hundreds of years, Cleopatra's family lived in giant palaces surrounded by luxury, servants, and beautiful clothes. However, life in a royal family was never easy. The palace was a place of danger. Brothers, sisters, and cousins often fought for the throne. Sometimes they even killed each other just to wear the golden crown. From a very young age, Cleopatra realized a very important lesson: knowledge is power. While other royal children were playing or relaxing, Cleopatra was studying. She was brilliant. She studied mathematics, science, and philosophy. But her greatest talent was for languages. Most of her ancestors only spoke Greek, but Cleopatra was different. She learned the Egyptian language because she loved the people of her country. In total, she could speak at least 7 languages fluently, including Latin and Hebrew. Cleopatra also had a secret weapon: her confidence. People who met her said she had a voice like a musical instrument. She was not just a girl with a crown, she was a thinker and a politician. But her childhood was also filled with sadness. Her father, King Ptolemy XII, was a weak ruler. The people of Egypt did not respect him, and the powerful Roman Empire was starting to take control of Egyptian gold. Cleopatra watched her father struggle, and she promised herself that she would be a stronger leader. When Cleopatra was only 18 years old, her father died. In his will, he said that Cleopatra must rule Egypt. But there was a problem. In ancient Egypt, the law said she had to share the throne with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. At the time, her brother was only 10 years old. Cleopatra did not want to share her power with a child. She believed she was the true leader Egypt needed. But her brother's advisors were greedy men. They did not want a smart woman like Cleopatra to rule. They wanted the young boy to be king because he was easy to control. The palace turned against her. Cleopatra's life was in great danger. She was forced to flee for her life. Imagine this: the rightful queen of Egypt wandering in the hot, dry desert with only a few loyal friends. She had no army, no home, and no throne. Her brother was in the palace, and she was in the sand. But Cleopatra was not a woman who gave up. While she was hiding in the desert, she was not crying, she was planning. She knew that to take back her country, she needed a powerful ally. And at that very moment, the most powerful man in the world, Julius Caesar, arrived in Alexandria. Cleopatra knew this was her only chance. She just had to find a way to meet him without her brother's guards killing her first. Cleopatra knew she had to take a massive risk. Julius Caesar was staying in the royal palace in Alexandria, but the building was surrounded by her brother's soldiers. If Cleopatra tried to walk through the front gate, she would be captured or killed immediately. She needed a way to enter the palace in secret. She came up with a plan that sounds like something from an adventure story. One night, she asked her most loyal servant to wrap her inside a large, thick carpet. The servant tied the carpet with leather straps and carried it on his shoulder. He told the guards at the gate that he was bringing a special gift for the Roman general. The guards let him pass. Once inside Caesar's private rooms, the servant unrolled the carpet. To Caesar's absolute shock, a beautiful and confident young woman stepped out. She did not look like a woman who had been hiding in the desert. She looked like a queen. Caesar was a man who had traveled the world and met many famous people, but he had never seen anything like this. He was instantly impressed by her courage and her clever mind. They stayed up all night talking. Cleopatra told him about the history of Egypt, her dreams for her people, and how her brother's advisors were destroying the country. Caesar saw that Cleopatra was not just a royal girl, she was a brilliant politician. He decided to help her take back the throne. A fierce battle followed between the Roman army and the Egyptian soldiers loyal to her brother. In the end, her brother was defeated and he died while trying to escape across the Nile. Cleopatra was now the undisputed queen of Egypt. However, she knew that to keep her power, she had to stay close to Rome. Caesar stayed in Egypt for several months. They sailed down the Nile together on a giant, luxurious boat. Cleopatra showed him the ancient temples and the wealth of her land. During this time, Cleopatra gave birth to a son. She named him Caesarion, which means Little Caesar. She hoped that this boy would one day rule both Egypt and Rome, uniting the two greatest powers in the world. Eventually, Caesar had to return to Rome to manage his empire, but he did not want to leave Cleopatra behind. He invited her to visit him in Italy. Cleopatra accepted the invitation and traveled to Rome with her young son and a massive group of servants. When she arrived, she caused a sensation. She rode through the streets of Rome in a golden chariot, surrounded by exotic animals and Egyptian treasures. The people of Rome had never seen such luxury. Some Romans admired her, but many others were afraid. They saw her as a dangerous foreigner who was taking control of their leader's heart. Cleopatra lived in a beautiful villa near the Tiber River. She attended grand parties and met the most important leaders of Rome. She used her intelligence to influence Roman politics and fashion. But danger was growing in the shadows. Many Roman senators believed that Julius Caesar was becoming too powerful. They were afraid he wanted to become a king and that Cleopatra would be his queen. On a dark day in 44 BCE, a group of senators attacked Caesar in the Senate and assassinated him. The news of Caesar's death broke Cleopatra's heart. More importantly, it put her life in great danger again. Without Caesar's protection, she was a target in Rome. She knew she had to act fast to save herself and her son. In the middle of the night, she gathered her treasures, boarded a ship, and fled back to Egypt. As the sun rose over the Mediterranean Sea, Cleopatra looked back at the disappearing coast of Italy. She had lost her greatest ally, but she was still a queen. She returned to Alexandria and began to strengthen her country. She improved the economy, built up her army, and prepared her son to be a king. She was alone, but she was stronger than ever. Little did she know that another famous Roman general was about to enter her life, and a new chapter of love and war was about to begin. After the death of Julius Caesar, the city of Rome was like a storm.
Many powerful men were fighting to take control of the vast Roman Empire. In the end, 3 men shared the power. The most famous and colorful of these men was Mark Antony. He was a brave soldier, a skilled general, and a man who loved the finer things in life. Mark Antony was in charge of the eastern part of the Roman Empire, which was very close to Egypt. He needed money and supplies for his wars, and he knew that Egypt was the wealthiest land in the world. He sent a message to Cleopatra, demanding that she meet him in the city of Tarsus to explain her loyalty to Rome. Cleopatra was now a mature and wise ruler. She knew that this meeting was the most important moment of her life. She did not want to arrive as a servant or a minor queen. She wanted to show Mark Antony that she was a goddess and a powerful partner. She planned an entrance that people would talk about for thousands of years. She sailed to Tarsus on a majestic ship. The boat was made of gold, the oars were made of pure silver, and the sails were a beautiful royal purple. As the ship moved along the river, the air was filled with the sweet smell of exotic perfumes and the sound of beautiful music. Cleopatra herself sat on a throne, dressed as the goddess of love. When Mark Antony saw her, he was completely breathless. He had heard stories of her beauty and her mind, but the reality was even incredible. Cleopatra invited him to a grand dinner on her ship, and soon Mark Antony was under her spell. He forgot about his duties in Rome. He forgot about his worries. He fell deeply in love with the Queen of Egypt. Cleopatra invited him back to Alexandria, and the two spent a year living a life of unbelievable luxury. They formed a secret club called the Inimitable Livers, where they hosted giant parties and played games every night. They were the most famous couple in the world. But their relationship was not just about romance. It was a partnership of 2 empires. With Antony's help, Cleopatra regained many of the lands that Egypt had lost. In return, Antony gave Cleopatra the gold he needed to pay his soldiers. They had 3 children together, and for a while it seemed that they would rule the world. However, back in Rome, a new enemy was rising. His name was Octavian, and he was the young adopted son of Julius Caesar. Octavian was cold, smart, and very ambitious. He did not like that Mark Antony was living in Egypt with a foreign queen. He began to tell the people of Rome that Mark Antony had become too Egyptian and forgotten his Roman roots. Octavian used Cleopatra as a symbol of fear. He told the Roman Senate that Cleopatra wanted to conquer Rome and turn it into an Egyptian colony. This was a clever political move. Soon, the people of Rome turned against Mark Antony. Octavian declared war, but he did not declare war on Antony. He declared war on Cleopatra. He wanted it to look like a war against a foreign enemy, not a civil war between 2 Romans. Cleopatra and Mark Antony gathered their ships and their soldiers. They knew that a giant battle was coming. The future of the world would be decided on the waves of the sea. Cleopatra stood on the deck of her ship, looking at the horizon, knowing that everything she loved, her children, her crown, and her country, was now in the hands of fate. The year was 31 BCE, and the sea near the coast of Greece was covered with hundreds of warships. This was the Battle of Actium, the final fight for the future of the world. On one side was Octavian, with the disciplined and cold strength of the Roman heart. On the other side were Cleopatra and Mark Antony, with the gold and the spirit of the East. The sun was hot, and the sound of wood smashing against wood filled the air. But as the battle continued, it became clear that Octavian was winning. Cleopatra saw that her ships were being surrounded. In a moment of panic, or perhaps a strategic decision to save her country's wealth, she turned her ship around and sailed away toward Egypt. When Mark Antony saw her leaving, he did something that shocked his soldiers. He left his army and his ships in the middle of the fight to follow her. Without their leader, Antony's forces were quickly defeated. Cleopatra and Antony returned to Alexandria, but they knew that the end was near. Octavian was moving toward Egypt like a hungry wolf. The luxury and the laughter of the palace were gone, replaced by silence and fear. Cleopatra began to build a giant stone tomb for herself. She filled it with her most precious treasures: gold, silver, emeralds, and pearls. She wanted to make sure that if she died, her wealth would not fall easily into the hands of the Romans. Antony, meanwhile, was lost in his own sadness. He had lost his reputation as a great general, and he had lost the respect of Rome.
In the year 30 BCE, Octavian's army reached the walls of Alexandria. Antony took his sword and went out for one last fight, but his soldiers refused to fight for him. They surrendered to Octavian. At that same moment, a false message reached Antony. It said that Cleopatra had already killed herself inside her tomb. Antony's heart broke. He felt that there was no reason to live without her. He took his own sword and fell upon it. As he lay dying, he learned that the message was a mistake. Cleopatra was still alive. His servants carried him to her tomb, and he died in the arms of the woman he loved. Cleopatra cried over his body, but she knew she did not have much time to mourn. Octavian soon captured the city. He met with Cleopatra in her palace. He was polite, but Cleopatra was a very smart woman. She could see the truth in his cold eyes. Octavian wanted to take her back to Rome, not as a queen, but as a prisoner. He wanted to tie her in iron chains and parade her through the streets of Rome so that the people could laugh at the defeated queen of Egypt. For a woman of Cleopatra's pride and dignity, this was a fate worse than death. She realized that she could no longer save her kingdom, but she could still save her honor. On a quiet afternoon, Cleopatra asked her servants to prepare a grand bath and a final delicious meal. She dressed in her most beautiful royal robes. She put on her golden crown and her finest jewelry. According to the legend, she had a servant bring her a basket of figs, and hidden inside that basket was a small, poisonous snake called an asp. Cleopatra allowed the snake to bite her. When Octavian's guards entered the room a few minutes later, they were stunned. Cleopatra was not crying or begging. She was lying peacefully on a golden bed, looking like a goddess who was simply sleeping. She had died as a queen, on her own terms, choosing her own destiny. With Cleopatra's death, the ancient history of the pharaohs came to an end. Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire, and its great wealth was taken to Rome. Cleopatra's son, Caesarion, was killed by Octavian, who did not want any rivals to his power. But even though Cleopatra lost her kingdom, she won a place in history that no Roman general could ever take away. For over 2,000 years, artists, writers, and students have studied her life. She was a woman who lived in a man's world and ruled it with her mind. She was the first of her family to speak the language of the Egyptian people, and she was a leader who fought until the very last breath for the land she loved.
Cleopatra's story teaches us that true power is not just about gold or armies. It is about intelligence, resilience, and the courage to face the dark moments of life with dignity. She reminds us that even when we lose, we can choose how we are remembered. As you continue your journey in learning English and learning about the world, let Cleopatra's strength inspire you. Be bold in your learning. Be fearless in your dreams. Take control of your own story, just as she did. Her kingdom is gone, but her spirit is eternal. Thank you for traveling through history with me today. You have practiced your English and learned about a legend. Keep rising, keep learning, and I will see you in our next amazing story. Stay strong and stay unforgettable.